Jesse never thought his Tuesday morning would begin with a Prius plowing through a cactus, a woman in a visor screaming about non-compliant livestock, and his ribs getting slammed into a wrought iron gate because of a homemade wooden sign that read, "Welcome to the Dusty Dog Ranch." But there he was, sun glaring overhead, dirt in his boots, and Karen, clipboard in hand, looking like she was about to declare martial law over a patch of cow pasture. It started innocently enough. Jesse was fixing the ranch's front sign, hammer in one hand and a coffee thermos in the other, when the faint hum of tires crunching gravel crept up the road. He squinted toward the horizon. The outline of a beige Prius emerged from a cloud of dust, zigzagging like it was dodging invisible landmines. Jesse's face dropped. Only one person in the whole county drove like that and still believed she had jurisdiction over people's grass length. Karen. She screeched to a halt 10 feet from the gate, tires locking like the dramatic finale of a cop show, and launched out of the car like a disgruntled eagle. Her visor was crooked, her lipstick was war paint, and her expression screamed, "Someone is about to get a strongly worded letter. You can't just install unauthorized signage without architectural approval," she barked, flailing her arms like she was conducting an invisible orchestra of nonsense. Jesse blinked. "Ma'am, this is a ranch. Not a gated community. The only thing architectural out here is a barn that leans a little when the wind hits it." Karen marched toward him, her clipboard bouncing against her chest like a shield of righteousness. "I am the acting president of this neighborhood's HOA. And as such, I am enforcing the bylaws." "What bylaws?" Jesse interrupted, genuinely confused. "There's no HOA out here. It's all dirt and cows. I'm pretty sure the bylaws are don't get stepped on by a bull." Karen's face turned crimson. She whipped out a laminated page that looked like it had been run through a fax machine, then laminated again out of pure paranoia. "Section 7B states that signage visible from the road must be approved by the Aesthetic Committee." "Aesthetic Committee?" Jesse echoed. "What, you and your dog voting over brunch?" That was the moment it escalated. With a dramatic huff, Karen stormed forward, reached for her phone to take a picture of the sign, and when Jesse stepped in front of it, half smiling just to mess with her, she shoved him backward with both hands. Jesse stumbled, lost his footing, and thudded back against the iron ranch gate, his thermos clanging to the dirt. His breath caught from the hit, not because it hurt that bad, but because his brain was trying to process whether he just got body-checked by a fake HOA president on his own property. Karen gasped like she hadn't meant to actually make contact, but doubled down with a snarl. "Interfering with an officer of neighborhood compliance is a serious offense." Jesse pushed off the gate slowly, brushing dust off his jeans, still stunned. "Lady, you are one clipboard away from getting sued into next week." But before Karen could launch into another tirade, the ranch door creaked open with the slow, groaning sound of a classic Western movie. The dogs barked once. Then silence fell over the drive as a broad-shouldered man stepped out onto the porch in full sheriff's uniform, badge glinting, sunglasses in place, and a steaming mug of coffee in hand. Sheriff Buck didn't speak right away. He just stared. Karen's mouth opened. Closed. Then opened again. "Sheriff, I was just, intervening in an incident of non-permitted signage on a..." "This your property, ma'am?" Buck asked, voice steady as bedrock. Karen stammered. "Well, no, but I'm enforcing. Because you just put hands on my son," he said, sipping his coffee slowly. "On my land." The pause that followed could have frozen lava. Jesse, now smiling wide, leaned against the fence post like he was watching the start of his favorite TV show. Karen fumbled with her laminated bylaws, her face now matching the color of a ripe tomato. I didn't realize. I thought he was a trespasser." "Trespasser?" Jesse burst out laughing. "I've lived here since I was born. My crib had horses on it." Karen stepped backward, her clipboard visibly trembling now. "Well, if I've overstepped, it's only because I care about this neighborhood's safety and decorum. We live 15 miles from the nearest stoplight," Buck said dryly. "If you want decorum, might I suggest moving closer to a suburb?" Karen opened her mouth, possibly to protest or cry or teleport out of the situation, but instead, she backed toward her Prius, muttering something about speaking to county higher-ups and community standards, while fidgeting with her car keys. As she reversed down the dirt road, tires gently kicking up dust like an embarrassed cloud of shame, Jesse turned to his dad. "Did I just get assaulted by an HOA president who doesn't actually have an HOA?" Buck didn't flinch. "Yup. And she thinks she's got jurisdiction out here? Over a bunch of cows, maybe." There was a long pause as both men watched the Prius disappear beyond the ridge. The dogs trotted back to the porch like they'd seen this all before. "Should we do something?" Jesse asked, now rubbing his ribs. "Oh, we will," Buck said, adjusting his belt. "But first, I'm gonna need a refill on this coffee. You might want to check on the sign, though. Looks like she dented it with her soul." Jesse laughed, the adrenaline finally starting to wear off. But even as the humor settled in, there was something off in the air. This wasn't just Karen being Karen. That laminated paper had a county seal on it. Or something that looked an awful lot like one. He turned back to the gate, staring at the dusty road. Karen might have just committed assault, but something told Jesse that wasn't going to be the last of her visits. And this time, she wasn't just being annoying, she was playing a bigger game. And he had a feeling the next time she showed up, she wouldn't be alone. The following morning, Jesse woke up to find 3 identical envelopes shoved into the mailbox, all bearing a wonky emblem that looked suspiciously like it had been stolen from a Google image search. One was addressed to him, one to his dad, and one, to everyone's confusion, to the family goat, Crumbles. Jesse stood at the fence, scratching his head while Crumbles stared blankly at the envelope like she was debating whether to eat it. The letters inside were typed in Comic Sans and titled, "Official Notice of Violation," citing a list of absurd offenses. "Excessive dust creation, improper fence aesthetics," and "suspicious livestock behavior." Jesse laughed so hard he nearly dropped his coffee. His laughter died down only when he realized some of the neighbors had received similar letters, and some weren't laughing. Later that afternoon, Jesse drove into town for feed, and everywhere he went, people kept bringing up that HOA thing. At the hardware store, an old man whispered, "She fined me for my porch swing being too swingy." At the diner, someone claimed Karen issued a warning because their sunflowers were too provocative. It was starting to feel less like a joke and more like a bizarre uprising, with Karen at the helm of some pastel-colored bureaucracy. When Jesse got back to the ranch, Riley was already waiting on the porch with a laptop in one hand and a half-eaten banana in the other. She didn't even say hello before launching into what she'd found. Apparently, Karen had created a full-blown website for her HOA, which stood for Home Order Authority, a name that sounded like it had been cooked up during a suburban wine night gone horribly wrong. The site featured fake bylaws, a compliance hotline that forwarded to her personal number, and a dues page with tiered memberships. Jesse read aloud from the screen. Silver package, $15 per month, includes basic protection and random citations. Gold package, $50 per month, priority compliance plus monthly lawn inspections. Platinum, $100 per month, HOA peacekeeper patrols and direct access to the president. He nearly choked on his gum. She made herself a mafia with name tags. Riley was already several steps ahead. She had screenshots, cached versions of deleted posts, and even a screen recording of Karen changing the bylaws in real time. She edits them depending on who she's mad at, Riley said, scrolling through a timeline. 3 days ago, you couldn't have more than 3 chickens. Yesterday, it changed to no free-range animals visible from the road. Today, she banned wind chimes. Jesse whistled. She's weaponizing Microsoft Word. But the real kicker came when Riley pulled up a payment tracker embedded on the site. Somehow, through a mix of fear-mongering and absolute confusion, Karen had convinced at least 9 households to pay dues. Some had coughed up over $500 in backdated infractions. It was digital robbery wrapped in a blanket of fake authority. Jesse's jaw clenched. She's shaking down our neighbors like it's a protection racket. They brought all of it to Sheriff Buck, who read through the files with the same expression he usually reserved for people who tried to bribe traffic cops with barbecue coupons. He sat back, arms crossed, the brim of his hat shadowing his eyes. This woman's out here impersonating an official entity, collecting money under false pretenses, and issuing threats of fines without any legal power? Jesse nodded. Buck took a deep breath. Then it's time we put her little fantasy town into reality check. But Buck, ever the old-school lawman, didn't want to charge in. He wanted evidence. Not just screenshots or hearsay, something real, undeniable, and airtight. He leaned over the kitchen table and looked at his son and niece. I want her caught in the act. Legal and clear. No scare tactics, no confrontations. I need her to admit it on record, or at least act on her fake authority while we're watching. Jesse grinned. So what? We set a trap? Riley was already plotting. We need her to come after someone new. Someone she doesn't suspect. Someone dumb enough to look like easy prey but smart enough to bait her into overplaying her hand. Jesse raised a brow. So, me? Exactly. And so Operation HOA Hustle was born. That weekend, Jesse borrowed an old, beat-up trailer and parked it on an empty patch of land just outside the ranch. They threw up a for sale sign, a fake Facebook listing, and a few potted plants to make it look freshly occupied. Jesse adopted a persona. Kyle McThistle, new to town, ignorant of all things local. He wore mismatched boots, carried a chipped ukulele, and set out a lawn chair facing the road. Karen showed up within 24 hours. She pulled up in the Prius, again like a villain entering the scene just 5 minutes too early for the hero's arrival. She got out, papers in hand, and approached the trailer like she was inspecting an alien crash site. Hello? She said sweetly, though her smile was tight and her eyes were scanning the yard like a hawk looking for code violations. I'm Karen. I serve as president of the Home Order Authority for this area. Are you the new tenant? Yup, Jesse said with a fake twang. Name's Kyle. Just rolled in from Nevada. Big fan of dirt and open sky. You folks got any rules about swinging hams on a clothesline? Karen blinked, then switched gears. Well, Kyle, welcome. I just wanted to make you aware of the HOA structure around here. Most residents are proud members. We keep the peace, maintain safety, and make sure our beautiful town stays orderly. Sounds lovely, Jesse drawled. Do I sign a paper or something? Karen launched into a pitch about the different packages. Jesse feigned interest, then casually asked, So, what happens if I don't join? Karen's eyes narrowed. Well, I can't force anyone, but let's just say those who don't comply, they tend to experience certain difficulties. Lost mail. Missed trash pickup. Complaints to animal control. You'd be surprised how quickly a place can become unlivable when no one's looking out for it. Jesse nodded slowly. That sure sounds like a threat, Miss Karen. Karen smiled coldly. It's not. It's a warning. Riley caught it all from a distance, filming through a high-powered phone lens attached to a tripod, audio crystal clear thanks to a directional mic Jesse had hidden in a flower pot. Sheriff Buck watched the live stream from his office, already dialing the county prosecutor. Karen had just walked into her own trap, and she didn't even know it yet. By the time she left, Jesse had managed to get her to give him an official warning, citation, complete with the forged county seal and a fake fine of $75 for unregulated wind ornaments. As she drove off, Jesse dropped the act and tipped his hat to the camera. That night back at the ranch, the team celebrated with cold soda and barbecue ribs. But Buck wasn't smiling yet. This is just the start, he warned. You poke a bear like Karen, she don't back down. She doubles down. You just made yourself her #1 target, son. Jesse didn't seem worried. Well, if she's coming for us, she better pack more than a clipboard next time. 2 days after the trap was sprung, Karen's face was plastered across half the town's group chats, usually in memes or slideshow-worthy clips Riley had edited together with banjo music and animated red flags flying from her clipboard. Jesse's alter ego, Kyle McThistle, had gone semi-viral in the local Facebook community, and the citation he received for wind ornament disobedience was hanging proudly on the ranch fridge under a novelty magnet shaped like a cow's butt. But no one was laughing for long. Because while Karen may have stumbled into their setup, she was already gearing up for a comeback, and she was aiming to take things way further than just weird threats and fake fines. It started with the town notice board. Overnight, a new flyer was posted across downtown, hardware stores, laundromats, even the barbershop. It read, "Emergency HOA meeting, mandatory attendance for all area residents, agenda, community threats, unauthorized structures, and defamation against HOA authority." Printed in bold red ink, with that same fake county emblem like it was hot off a rogue office printer, the flyer ended with a meeting time and location, Saturday night at the rec center. "She's calling a town meeting," Jesse muttered, holding the flyer in one hand while feeding Crumbles with the other. "Did she just promote herself to town marshal or something?" Riley, who hadn't stopped sleuthing since the HOA incident started, spun her laptop around. She changed the bylaws again. "Now anyone who doesn't attend the meeting is in willful noncompliance and subject to immediate review." Jesse scoffed. "Immediate review of what? My fence posts? Your existence?" Riley deadpanned. "She's trying to turn herself into the mayor of nowhere." Sheriff Buck read the flyer, sighed, and took off his hat like the absurdity was physically weighing it down. "This isn't just about our ranch anymore. She's trying to scare the whole town into submission. And worse? Some folks are buying it. You'd be surprised how quick people fall in line when someone talks confident and waves a clipboard." They decided to attend the meeting, but not empty-handed. Riley compiled a full expose slideshow, complete with screenshots, payment receipts, video clips of Karen making thinly veiled threats, and a guest appearance by Sir Wiggles, her miniature schnauzer who, according to one of her pages, held the title of Treasurer and Bark Patrol. Jesse reached out to a few neighbors who had also been targeted. They agreed to come, some reluctantly, some fired up. Buck brought along 2 deputies and notified the district attorney's office in case anything illegal went down. All that was left was to wait for Saturday. When they walked into the rec center that night, the place was packed. Dozens of folding chairs filled the main room, with a cheap plastic podium set up in front of a projector screen. Karen stood behind it in full theatrical flair, wearing a navy blazer, a sash that read, "President of Property Peace," and a pin shaped like a gavel. Her hair was sprayed to within an inch of its life. Her smile was wide and unblinking. "Welcome, residents," she began, voice echoing through a crackly mic. "Thank you for answering the call to restore harmony to our beautiful community." Jesse leaned over to Riley and whispered, "This feels like the first 10 minutes of a cult documentary." Karen launched into a speech about neighborhood decline, unsafe signage, suspicious poultry, and the threat of defamation posed by those who undermined the authority of the HOA. When someone from the back asked, "What HOA?" "There ain't one here." Karen smiled sweetly and replied, "That's the beauty of civic responsibility. We built one together." Then came the twist. She gestured to a man sitting in the front row wearing a navy windbreaker and a badge around his neck. "And to ensure the legal security of this organization, we've brought in a compliance consultant. Mr. Reynolds is here to advise us on further enforcement options." Jessie stared hard at the guy. Something about him felt off. Riley pulled out her phone and whispered, "He's not a compliance officer. That badge is for a private security company. I think she hired a rent-a-cop to look official." Karen continued, introducing a vote to ratify new policies, stricter dust control, limitations on livestock visibility, mandatory yard inspections, and a $200 fine for sustained disobedience. As murmurs rose in the crowd, Jessie stood up. "Mind if I say a few words?" Karen hesitated. "We're in the middle of policy approvals." Buck stood next. "Then consider this a legal intervention." The room went dead silent. Karen's smile froze on her face like she'd been hit with a taser of pure panic. Jesse stepped forward, Riley wheeling up a projector. "We've been doing a little research," Jesse said, voice steady. "And what we found is that this HOA doesn't exist. Not legally, not locally, and not even ethically. You've created an illusion of authority, used fake documents to issue fines, and taken money from people under false pretenses. That's fraud." Riley clicked through the slides. Each one brought gasps, laughter, and outrage from the crowd, especially the one showing Karen photoshopping herself into a ribbon-cutting ceremony that never happened. Karen scrambled toward the projector like she might unplug it, but Deputy Laney stepped between her and the cord. The rent-a-cop in the windbreaker quietly stood up and backed away from Karen like he didn't want to be caught on the wrong team. As Buck stepped to the podium, he read off the list of Karen's potential charges: impersonation of a public official, fraud, harassment, and extortion. Karen finally found her voice and shouted, "I was only trying to protect the community. You all laughed when weeds grew on that old lot, but I made it better." Someone yelled from the back, "You fined me for my garden gnome." Karen's face twisted. "It was leering." Buck gestured to the deputies. "Karen Fisher, you're under investigation. You have the right to remain silent." The projector clicked to the final slide, a photo of Sir Wiggles in sunglasses with the caption, "Free the Treasurer." The room erupted. Some neighbors clapped. Others hugged. A few folks asked if the HOA dues would be refunded. Riley promised to help coordinate that. Karen, escorted out of the rec center, muttered something about ungrateful fools and ignorant livestock sympathizers. Jesse stood in the center of it all, watching the chaos settle into laughter and small talk. Riley fist bumped him. Buck put a hand on his son's shoulder. "Not bad for a guy who got slammed into a gate last week." Jesse grinned. "All part of the ranch life, Dad." But deep down, even as the night ended and the townsfolk went home, Jesse couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't quite done. People like her didn't fold easy. And he had a strange suspicion the saga of the self-declared HOA president wasn't over just yet. 3 days after the rec center showdown, the town was still buzzing. The video of Karen's meltdown had racked up thousands of views online, thanks to Riley's strategic tagging and a perfectly timed zoom-in on Sir Wiggles during her arrest. People were stopping Jesse on the street to thank him for standing up to her. Neighbors were swapping fake HOA violation stories like war tales, and someone even hung a banner on their fence that read, "This property is protected by common sense." For the first time in weeks, the air around the ranch felt light again, like the dust had finally settled. But deep down, Jesse couldn't relax. He knew Karen. Knew the type. She wasn't the kind to walk away quietly, especially not when she'd built a whole fake kingdom on printer paper and laminated delusions. And sure enough, she wasn't done. It started with rumors. One neighbor claimed they saw Karen's Prius parked outside the courthouse. Another said she'd been visiting local businesses, handing out printed pamphlets about corruption in rural law enforcement. Jesse found one of those pamphlets taped to a gas pump, with a badly photoshopped picture of Sheriff Buck and the caption, "Is your town being run by rancher royalty?" The picture was from a 4th of July barbecue. Buck was holding a hot dog. Jesse ripped it down before anyone else could see it, but it was clear, Karen was trying to turn public opinion against them. Then came the lawyer. Or at least, someone claiming to be one. A formal-looking envelope arrived at the ranch, addressed to Buck. Inside was a cease and desist letter demanding an apology for the wrongful disruption of a legal community organization. The letter had belonged to an actual law firm, just not one in their state. Riley looked it up and confirmed the address was a P.O. box tied to a mail forwarding service in Nevada. The signature at the bottom was typed. Not signed. Karen had gotten bold again, this time hiding behind the idea of legal power instead of fake badges. Buck wasn't rattled. He made a few calls, confirmed no real lawyer was involved, and tossed the letter into the fire pit without ceremony. But the message was clear, Karen wasn't finished. And when people like her didn't win with rules, they turned to chaos. That chaos came to a head the following Friday, just before sunset. Jesse was in the barn, brushing down one of the horses, when Crumbles started bleeding like the sky was falling. Riley came running from the porch, shouting something about the front gate. Jesse grabbed his boots and bolted outside, heart pounding before he even saw the dust cloud. A small caravan of cars had pulled up near the ranch entrance. Karen stood at the front, not in a Prius this time, but a borrowed Jeep with a custom magnet on the side that read, "Citizens for Order." Behind her were 3 more cars, packed with people, some he recognized as easily swayed neighbors, others he didn't know at all. One held a bullhorn. Another had stacks of signs. Jesse could already hear the shouting. "This ranch is a threat to our community values," one voice boomed through the bullhorn. "We demand accountability," another yelled. Karen held up a clipboard like it was a sword. "We are staging a peaceful citizen inspection of this property and its violations." Jesse stormed to the gate, Riley behind him, phone already recording. "Karen," he called out, "this is private property. You bring a mob here, you're not protesting, you're trespassing." Karen lifted her chin. "We have a right to inspect unsafe conditions. Your livestock has been observed acting erratically. That goat stared down my neighbor's toddler for 23 seconds. That goat thinks she's people," Jesse said. "That's not illegal." More shouting. More signs. One woman tried to climb over the fence before falling back into a patch of weeds. The situation teetered between ridiculous and dangerous. Jesse looked toward the ranch house. Buck hadn't come out yet. He was probably watching from the porch, waiting for the right moment. And then the moment arrived. The screen door slammed open. Buck stepped outside in full uniform, his hat low and his holster in plain sight. He didn't draw his weapon, he didn't need to. His presence alone brought the chaos to a sharp, uncomfortable silence. Even the bullhorn dropped a few decibels. He walked slow, steady, like the sheriff in an old western just before the final showdown. Crumbles bleated again, this time more dramatically, like she knew this was her Oscar scene. Buck stopped at the gate, right next to Jesse. "Karen, I've had just about enough of your theater. This land's been in my family since before you knew how to laminate a flyer. Now you bring a crowd to my fence, try to stir up trouble, and accuse my livestock of psychological warfare?" Karen stepped forward, bristling. "Your family has a history of intimidating citizens. This is a civil movement to address systemic abuse of authority." Buck nodded slowly. "And it's also a violation of about 4 county ordinances and 2 state trespassing laws. You brought a group onto my property without permission, with the intent to disrupt, harass, and film for what, your next HOA audition reel?" Karen tried to answer, but Buck held up a hand. "You want to report me? Fine. There's the sheriff's office downtown. You want to inspect livestock? Call animal control. You want to pretend you're some elected official in a place with no government structure? That's your fantasy. But this ends today." One of the neighbors tried to interject, but Buck turned his gaze toward them. "Anyone who sets foot past that gate without permission will be arrested for trespassing. Anyone who contributes to harassment on this land will face legal consequences. And if I see one more letter from a fake law firm, I'll make sure the DA knows you're not just playing games, you're committing fraud." Karen stood frozen. Her crowd had started to shift uncomfortably. One man mumbled that he had dinner plans. Another turned and walked back to his car. Within minutes the group dissolved, like steam from a pot that had just lost heat. Karen looked around, realizing no one was left standing beside her. She turned toward Jesse one last time. "This isn't over." He smiled. "Yeah, it is." As the Jeep pulled away and the sun finally dipped below the ridge, Jesse let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Riley stopped recording and sent the footage to 3 local reporters. Buck took off his hat, wiped his brow, and looked at his son. "You handled yourself real good today." Jesse grinned. "Think Crumbles was the real MVP." Riley raised a brow. "I still say we get her a badge." Later that night, as they sat on the porch with cold drinks and tired grins, A new car pulled into the driveway. Jesse tensed, but this one wasn't a Jeep or a Prius. It was a government vehicle, real plates, real logos. A man stepped out and approached the porch. "You Sheriff Buck?" "That's me." The man smiled. "I'm from the state attorney's office. We've had several complaints come in. Seems there's been some HOA-related fraud in your jurisdiction. Mind if we talk?" Buck stood, offered the man a seat, and glanced at Jesse. "Told you it wasn't quite over yet." And Jesse, sipping his sweet tea, just leaned back and said, "At least this time, we're playing by the real rules."